is Best in Heritage 2024 edition, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to the Best Museums Change Lives Project 2023 awardees. It's an award given by the Museums Association of UK, and I'm joined by Isabel MacDonald, who is a curator of social history for Glasgow Museums. Hi, Isabel.
Hi.
And by Tarek, who is a trustee of the Bangladeshi Association in Glasgow. Hi, Tarek.
Hello.
And Marlene, a change maker from our Shared Cultural Heritage Youth Project. Hi, Marlene.
Hiya.
Congratulations, first of all. So, would you like to introduce the project, the institutions, organizations, and all those that made this project a reality?
So this was a project between Glasgow Museums and two other organisations, the Bangladesh Association Glasgow and young people who were involved in the Our Shared Cultural Heritage Project, which was running in Glasgow Museums but funded by the British Council. And the project had two phases running over 2 consecutive years, and we were funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council via a project called the Exchange Project, which set out to encourage community-led research around museum objects. And apart from that, they and their other criteria was that they wanted the projects to be looking at colonial history or empire, those kinds of topics. But apart from that, it was very relaxed about what we could achieve. And so a lot of the project was really driven by what the community partners wanted to do, with the museums much more in a role of facilitation, giving access to the main object and trying to support the partners to achieve what they wanted to do. But it was a really great collaborative project that we all, I think, enjoyed immensely and got a lot out of personally, and also for the communities that the partners were representing. And the project really focused on one object in our collections, which is a cast iron plaque dating to maybe the 1890s from the docks in Glasgow, and it said on it in English and Bengali, Lascars only. So really showing that at that time the toilet facilities were separated for the white sailors and the sailors from the colonies as they then were. And there were a whole set of questions we could ask around that, why is it in Bengali? Why are there separate facilities? Why were these sailors here in the first place? And you wouldn't think that one object could lead to so many different outcomes and research avenues, but it was absolutely amazing.
So in a way, your rationale revolves, the main focus of that is one object, essentially.
Yes.
That's the point of departure.
Yes, it was. And although we did then find other objects in the collections that you could connect to these sailors, or Lascars as they were called at the time, really it was just this one object that got us all excited, and that's what the project was focused on.
Okay, so I'm curious, what do you think there were the particular qualities or innovations that impressed the jury?
Well, there are many things. I think this project has got all different parts. Particularly, this is a community-led research project, and of course the community was heavily involved, and also this is the community people are telling their ancestor story, and I think the community people here are the best in the best place to represent the Lascars, because they share the same cultural identity and what Lascars used to believe, their thinking process, their behavior. That probably matches the most accurately or more similarly to the present day Bangladeshi community, and they are telling their own story. I think that attracts the jury, but also. The project had many parts, as I told, and we told the story in all the different important medias, particularly in a live play, in a drama, which is the drama stage in a bowel of a 100-year-old ship, similar ship where Lascar used to work before, and also which was followed by a conference that was participated by the scholars, academicians, museum curators, and committee members, and. Not only that, on the second part of the project, there was a film was made and about how the research was conducted and the outcome of the research. And finally, a book was published, and that book can be also taken as a reference book for the people who want to do research on Lascars in the future. So overall, there lots of work was done, and which by the community people, and I think the overall all these aspects the jury took into consideration when they chose us.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add the fact that, like, of course, like we had a lot of different kinds of research outcomes, but it's also the fact that this project involved so many kinds of people, starting from, of course, like us and our communities, to literally a real life Lascar based in Bangladesh who was supported by Bangladesh Association, and they ended up starting their own business because of the financial support that they were given. So when you say museum changes lives, like, it's not only bringing communities together, it was an intergenerational project, it was dealing with generational trauma. It obviously a lot of it is colonial history, and it was bringing people from so many walks of life together who shared the passion of storytelling and the passion of empathetic storytelling. And not only did it change our lives, but I think one of the things, if hypothetically, if I was in the jury, I would love to see that the very people the stories were about, the Lascars, we ended up changing literally one Lascar's life. That was incredible.
I got one question for you that I would really like to ask, which is more specific about how this project has changed lives. But before we get to that question, I mean, I'm sure you had difficulties, but you also had a positive experience. Can you share those with us, perhaps? You, Tarek, from the community's perspective, and Marlene, perhaps more from a change maker's perspective.
Of course, I mean, it was a new approach, as a new idea, and it started during the time of the pandemic, and it went through the post-pandemic period. And of course, it was a very difficult time because that time still we are in lockdown situation, or people are still not going out that much. Our life changed permanently since pandemic. We all know that. And people are not going out to get the people's involvement, particularly the Bangladeshi community members, and their involvement was difficult at the outset. But we overcome that. We took this project as a healer so that people would come and participate in the project and enjoy. And when people found that they're represented, they're listened, their story, they can tell their story, and people find this interesting, and they feel valued. So they came out, and that immensely helped them in the post-pandemic situation. But yes, initially I think the pandemic period, and to overcome from this post-pandemic period was challenging.
Yeah, I think navigating this project, especially a project that involved so much of research, and both archival as well as like participatory research, or like as many conversations as possible. When you have something so people-based, it's very tricky to do that when you're asked to stay, like when you're asked to social distance and stay at home and wear the masks. So of course, like the pandemic really, that was quite challenging, navigating that. I think as young people, we were three young people from Osh who were a part of it. I think it was when we were going through some of the materials, especially like, so I come from Calcutta, which used to be the capital of, British East India Company. And so many times when we would go through the materials that were sent to us, it felt like, I think we were quite shocked and appalled by the normalization of dehumanization that was allowed to happen. And I think, if anything, that it did make us feel, we can't help but be empathetic, right? I mean, we are human beings. And when you read stories like this, and when you're given the responsibility of like essentially dissecting it and creating stories out of it, it comes with the cost of essentially feeling it all. And some of it is generational trauma. And I think a sort of both outrage, but at the same time grief with how this was normalized, how somebody, because Laskar was a derogatory word. These people, whether it was when it came to wages, when it came to, living conditions, everything was very different from their white peers. And of course, it seeped in racism. And of course, these are very, very difficult themes to navigate, especially as a young person. And it was a first for all of us. But I think one of the redeeming factors, I mean, it is one of the things where it's like you have to feel it and you have to go through certain emotions in order to make a change. You have to see what should never be done to make sure it's never done. And I think the kind of community support that we got, like whether it was from Isabel, whether it was from Bangladesh Association, like it was incredibly helpful. And it was good to know that we are not the only ones feeling like this. A lot of times young people are, when we are responding in a very human way to injustice, a lot of times our voices are shut down. But it was lovely to see that not only were we given the safe space to feel what we were feeling, but we were encouraged to, learn from this and create from that space of empathy.
Very interesting. I'd like to take you more into the both sides of the project, and I think it was you, Tarek, who mentioned also the various phases of the project. And in the second phase, you also referred to the production of a documentary, a book, and a podcast. You also mentioned a play that was put up in the first phase of the project. So I'm really curious to understand the reasons why you chose those platforms and whether these relate to each other. Is there any reason?
So in the first place, the drama or the play that we chose because what the community can do that we found out, and we had experience of staging play, particularly in 2016. Bangladeshi community actually represented the Glasgow city in National Theatre Scotland's Home Away project, and we staged a theatre in Tramway, which is a very iconic and very prestigious theatre venue. And since then, we're supported by National Theatre Scotland, and we perform various plays. So this one, that was one of the reasons actually we chose the play, but most importantly, as I told, that we were trying to find a way where people would come out of their house in the post-pandemic time, and we found that the play and telling their own story, their ancestor story, in a live play would be the best way to afford the performers and also to tell the story, and that's why we chose the play in the first place.
And so in a way, the choice came from the community, right?
Yes, and this I want to mention that when we worked as a partner with the museum, we are given the ownership, we are given the empowerment, we are given the authority to choose what we wanted to do, and we are well supported by the museum. And also, I want to mention that the stories of the play, all the script that was written was based on all the historical facts and events and stories, and those stories were probably otherwise would be lost completely, and those are like intangible heritage, intangible stories, and those were told. So it is not completely fictional drama, so it's based on historical evidences.
Can I just add also maybe the structure of the two phases was kind of dependent on the funding. So the phase 1 funding was very much to give the community partners the freedom and the choice to do their own research and devise their own outcomes. And the phase 2 funding was much more about consolidating what had been done in phase 1, which is why a book and a film that is kind of documenting what we had done and pulling together the work, not just from the Bangladesh Association, excuse me, but also a lot of the work that the young people had done, plus contributions when we had our academic conference, and we got a whole range of speakers from museums, archives, from the universities. So it was really, phase 2 was trying to pull everything together for the future almost, yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say anything about what you guys did?
For phase 1, OSH responded to the Laskar Research Project by essentially creating a series of blogs, a zine, which was supposed to be a film, but then one of our members ended up traveling and it became quite tricky, so we ended up making a zine so that we could edit collaboratively online. And then one of the participants also made a film, a poetry film, in response to the research. Again, all the creative outcomes were based on the historical facts and figures. I personally ended up creating a stationery collection, a series of illustrations, which are actually also seen throughout the Laskar Research book that was published. But essentially, it was us assimilating all the research that we were given, research visits, and essentially taking that information and responding creatively to it. And I ended up doing it visually. I ended up imagining how it would have looked visually, and ended up creating an illustration series and my first stationery collection, which was wonderful. And it wouldn't have been possible without this sort of support and without this sort of a project.
I have one last question for you. The way you describe the project reminds me of a process. It is a process of change in a way. And I would like to ask you more of a personal question at this point in time. Do you feel that this project has changed your life? Besides, obviously, the impact and the legacy that concerns the community, as Tarek has been rightly describing. What is the impact?
Well, personally for myself, right, because I was heavily involved throughout the whole project, and along with my other committee member friend, Dr. Saif Khan. So I was also writing the script of the drama, and when I was writing the script, which is in a poetic form, the whole script is actually poetry, and there's lots of songs included there as well. Of course, it was an emotional journey for me, and going through the stories, telling the sufferings of the Laskars, their plight, and what they faced in the ship and the land, including discrimination and also migration to other countries, all this. Also, when I was further involved in the project, I gained lots of knowledge, particularly from the conferences we attended. I had to read lots of articles and books about Laskar's mutiny and their life. When producing the documentary, I had to travel to Bangladesh and interviewed a late generation Lasker, and I found he was a very poor condition. And as Melanie said, we actually helped him from a very small contribution, but that actually was a big help for him. So, yeah, going through all this process, of course, a change me in for many aspects, and another way it changed is I felt that I'm listened. My story is being is told, and so I can trust our museum partner, and I'm feeling valued, and not only now, I also feel that even I am not here, or my community is not here, probably after 50 years, people will not forget us. So that gives a relief, and I think that how it changes my perception and view towards the museum, and also towards the whole Scottish community.
I think on a personal level, this project did change my life, because before this project, I had never been to an academic conference. I had never known how...
More pragmatic. In a way, change, no? In a way.
Absolutely, everything changed. I learned so many new skills. I got to, most importantly, I got to learn how to take academic information and turn it into something creative, like learn that bridge between the two. I got to meet such beautiful people, like incredible people from, of course, like Glasgow Museums, Bangladesh Association, but also National Museum of Scotland, like with the Exchange Project, just incredibly kind, wonderful people. And I think there was this sense of solidarity among all of us, this sense of community. And it was, rooted in the need to share this stories of people who didn't have a voice when they lived most of the times. And I think what started with an object, like a plaque, turned into an adventure, turned into a collective journey. By the end of it, all of our lives were changed. I mean, obviously on a community level, on a public level, of course, winning this award, but also on a personal level, because I think looking back, of course, I'm grateful for the skills I picked up, but as a young person, I think one of the most beautiful things that happened with this project is getting to meet people who are obviously like older than us, but then literally our friends, like being so kind, being so open-minded, sharing all their, wisdom and their knowledge with no ego, and just, like yourself, like just being so lovely, meeting incredible people and building these sort of like, connections. I think that was one of the things that actually ended up changing my life.
Fantastic. Isabel?
Well, I would agree with what Melanie just said, that I have found myself working with absolutely fantastic people who were really passionate and who just worked so hard to deliver everything that they were working on. And I think, as Tarek said before, we started all this at the end of the pandemic when we'd all been working from home for a long time. And so suddenly working with people who were excited about things just was great. And we absolutely, myself and my colleague Emily and my colleague Shahana, who are also involved from the museum side, we all just put so much time into this and worked really hard, because it was just so great after that awful period that had gone before. And, professionally, I suddenly feel much more confident in my work and what I can deliver, and working with communities, I feel more confident to say what I think about things, the way I can express myself about object and the work that we're doing. And obviously it's great to have professional recognition, which I never expect. We didn't do the project for that. We did it because it had to be done, in a sense. But we're great. Yeah. So it's been brilliant.
Fantastic. Tarek, Isabel, Marlene, it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you for your time, and congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.